And welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football, presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where if you use the promo code Owls Flightdeck10 at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order. So get over to sportbuffshop.com, use the code, save 10%, and support local. I'm Tim Capper. You can find me on X at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on X, so make sure you shoot me a follow over at Cliffy D.
Is this one of the times of the year, Cliff, where Alouette fans and supporters, media just cringe? Because
Back to school, back to work, no more vacation.
No, worse than that. A bye week.
Yeah, you know what? And we've talked about this before, that bye weeks are such a funny thing because it's one of those times where no news is good news, because in the past, when the Alouettes have had a bye week, it's usually when something monumental happens, and not necessarily monumental good, but kind of like, oh crap, what now? And the past couple of bye weeks, to the credit of the organization, have been in that no news is good news category. You hear about signings, you may hear about transactions, but you don't hear about nobody's getting fired, nobody's getting released, nobody is, losing out in anything. It's just a simple matter of, okay, business as usual.
Is it fair to say that this bye week in 2024 was probably one of the better bye weeks in a long time, because you talk about positivity and things that we would like to see? I will admit, there were a lot of things that came out of this bye week that I did not expect to see or hear at all. So let's get started, buddy, because there was no game. We didn't play any of the Labor Day Classics. So.
No, we didn't go to Victoria either to play in a Touchdown Pacific. So it was one of those weekends where you can just sit back, relax, watch football, and just say, whatever game you're watching, you can say, I just hope both teams have fun. And some of them did.
Speaking of Victoria, by the way, it may have been a smaller venue, but wasn't that venue just absolutely stunning?
It was. And gotta give credit to CFL and CSN, the drone shots that they showed, and then going out through Victoria itself. I mean, listen, you want, if the goal of this was to help promote tourism in Victoria, I'd say they did a pretty fantastic job, because it definitely looks like a very pretty city. It definitely looks like the kind of place you'd want to make the pilgrimage to and watch a football game. I mean, it's a little unfortunate, though, that it happens to be the same year where Vancouver is hosting the Grey Cup. Because, I mean, if you're a CFL fan that wanted to go to a Touchdown Pacific because you've been to Touchdown Atlantic and you know how much fun that is, and you want to see if it's the same thing on the other coast, I mean, that's 2 trips to the West Coast that you're going to have to make this year if you're attending both Touchdown Pacific and the Grey Cup at BC Place. I mean, hey, if you can afford to do it, more power to you. But at the same time, I'm sure there was a lot of fans that would have loved to have gone to Touchdown Pacific. But simply put, if you got to choose between Touchdown Pacific and Grey Cup, you're doing one plane trip per year. Most are going to go with the Grey Cup, unless their team is playing in Touchdown Pacific. But even then, Grey Cup is always going to be the main draw, if you will, for the Canadian Football League.
And supposedly they talk already, because I heard this weekend, Randy Ambrosie was on Sports Cage, and he was asked basically the question: is it going to be Touchdown Pacific next year? Is it going to be Touchdown Saskatoon? Is it going to be Touchdown Quebec? Is it going to be? I guess it would be Touche Quebec. And in Randy Ambrosie fashion,
he answered the question without answering the question.
I have had some people reach out, blah 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 blah. I'll leave it at that. I've wondered what it would be like to have a touchdown. If you think about it, if there is a Touche Quebec, kind of would make sense, because it's about the same distance as Vancouver from Victoria. It's 3 hours, and they have they would play over at Peps over at U-Laval. So maybe that's one of the few times I'd be willing to give up a home game at Personal Molson.
What I wouldn't mind seeing eventually is football being played in the territories, if it's possible. Could you
Oh,
imagine?
wow.
Could you imagine a touchdown Arctic or touchdown Nunavut?
That would be, yeah, that would be, yeah, how farthest northern played football game. That would,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, the record is
'Cause
currently held. That record is currently held by Fort McMurray.
I was
Imagine
about to
going
say, yeah,
even further north into one of the territories. That'd be pretty damn cool.
yeah, that would be. Talk about positives, Cliff. Obviously during Labor Day, there were some positives. I guess we can talk first and foremost is that after the Labor Day was done with, going into Labor Day, there was no chance of the Alouettes actually clinching a playoff spot based off of all the stats that they were looking at when it came to the crossover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But after the case and all that occurred, Alouette fans and supporters were surprised with a tweet coming from the CFL, an announcement that the Alouettes did actually clinch a playoff spot and are now part of that road to Grey Cup 111.
You absolutely love to see it. Throwing up the X. My goodness. And I'm guessing it's because I have to believe with the BC Lions beating the Ottawa Red Blacks, even though they said if the Ottawa Red Blacks were to win, that would be part of the clinching formula, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing with Hamilton still being alive in the crossover, I think maybe that might have something to do with that as well. Again,
If I remember correctly, what was stated was that even though currently the Alouettes have 20 points, and then even though a team in the West, I can't remember who they said it was specifically, could reach 20 points, it wouldn't be enough to cross over because you have to have a better record.
right.
That's why the Alouettes have clinched at least third place in the CFL East.
Yep. I mean, don't if you're looking for information on buying home playoff game tickets, folks, you're not going to find it just yet. I think they're going to wait until they are guaranteed to finish no worse than second in order to be able to host.
Yeah, about to say pop those brakes because I'm getting PTSD about what happened where the Alouettes clinched really, really early. I'll say it, Rod Rust. So shh.
One of those if you know, you know kind of things. But
yeah. I think that was probably the earliest the Owls had clinched a playoff spot, and then it went into the So
yep,
yeah, but it was a positive. It was a huge positive, and obviously everybody's pumped about it. And it led to more news this week, obviously with the game coming up on Friday. But also, Cliff, that the Alouettes surprised us. And I was going to ask you, I mean, the Owls did announce they extended two players, didn't see it coming. First of all, tell us who they were. And are you surprised that they announced it now?
Am I surprised? No, because as I said, bye weeks can go one of two ways for the Alouettes. Either no news is good news or doom and gloom. So this, I don't think, falls under neither because it's news and it's good news. So it kind of flies in the face of what I just talked about. But truthfully, I mean, any chance you get to extend two members of the Grey Cup winning team that have been significant contributors from the moment they stepped on the field here in Montreal, to be able to extend these guys is, as far as I'm concerned, a win all day long. Who are we talking about? Let's start with number 85, wide receiver Tyler Sneed. Despite being on the injured list since, game 2, because he played in the opening game versus Winnipeg, got hurt, and he's been on the 6-game list ever since. He has been extended to the end of the 2025 season, which is absolutely fantastic. When he's healthy, when he's been on the field, we saw what he was able to do last year. We were calling him Cahoon 3.0 because, despite being vertically challenged, he is still an absolutely phenomenal player, making those catches, those dirty catches on second and short, and just getting those extra yards. Like, he's just one of those grinding kind of players, very much what like Ben Cahoon is. So, I mean, what an absolutely great role model, as far as I'm concerned, for Tyler Snead to follow. And he's putting in the work. He's put in the work. He's definitely shown that he is a valuable member of this organization. And so the Alouettes were very wise to extend him and make sure that he's on this team. Even though, I mean, there seems to be a bit of a logjam when it comes to receivers here on the Alouettes, but definitely securing the services of Tyler Snead is absolutely crucial and definitely a good thing to do. So in that sense, very good news. As well, bolstering this offensive line, which, let's give them credit. I mean, by and large, this year they have done an outstanding job. I mean, they've had their ups and downs here and there, but I mean, compared to where they were last year when they were letting everybody and their mother sack Cody Fajardo, this year it's been complete opposite when it comes to sacks, at least. And it's just a lot of the work that they've done.
My mom got 2 sacks. My mom got 2 sacks.
They were nice. I'm not going to lie. Those were phenomenal. But in order to prevent people, players, anyone from sacking Cody Fajardo, you need to have a strong offense. Yeah. You need to have a strong offensive line. And this gentleman is one of the cornerstones, figuratively and literally, of the offensive line for the Montreal Alouettes. Nick Callender, left tackle, basically your blindside guy, has extended now to the 2026 season, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, we've talked about what this line means. Guys like Justin Lawrence, Philippe Gagnon, Christian Matt, who, again, the OG, the godfather, if you will, of this offensive line. Nick Callender has been a massive contributor to the success and protecting the blind side of the quarterback, whether it's Cody Fajardo, Davis Alexander, Dominique Davis, or even Caleb Evans before he got hurt. Nick Callender has just been an absolute godsend as far as being a part of this O-line and a very integral part of what makes this line so special. And to be able, once again, being able to, much like Tyler Snead, being able to retain his services as well, and even beyond the 2025 season, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this is simply a case of the Alouettes just restocking the war chest, making sure that the pieces are in place. You talk about running it back, and a big part of that is to have those guys that were part of that championship team, back in contention, back able to be on the field and help this team compete again for a Grey Cup. And it's going to come down to, I guarantee you, by the time November rolls around, it's going to be the Tyler Sneads, the Nick Calendars, a lot of these guys that are here now. And either whether you're rejoining the team like Austin Mack or you already were on the team like Callender and Snead were, those are the guys you're going to absolutely need in November to bring back home the Grey Cup championship. So they be able to get these guys under contract, signed, sealed, and delivered. Once again, Danny Mac just gets it done, simply put.
Yeah, and there's a huge possibility. Again, we were talking about Loa Ugalak. There's been, mad rumors that he may be re-signing. And, again, as you just said it about Danny Mac. And he was the funniest, but I got to say, the funniest thing about this week, he was on with Mitch Melnick again on TSN 690 this week. And Mitch mentions about the playoffs. He goes, he clinched, and Danny goes, we clinched a playoff spot? Whether or not he was trolling or whether he was being dead serious, which I would not be surprised, it just shows how,
laser
a horse
focus.
with blinders on for the 2024 season.
Without question. And it's just simply matter. Put your head down and go to work. I mean, he expects that of his players. The coaches expect that out of the players. And that's one of those ways of leading by example. That's exactly what Danny's done, is just put his head down, go to work, bring in these guys, making sure that the guys that are on this team stay on this team. Like the integral pieces have to be in place in order for this team to repeat as Grey Cup champions. And that's just what Danny Mac does. He finds the talent, he signs the talent, he keeps the talent. I mean, what more could you ask from your general manager, quite frankly? I mean, just once again, he just finds a way. I mean, by hook or by crook, to be able to keep this nucleus together is absolutely outstanding. And if you can find ways to add to it without breaking the bank, and hey, if you do break the bank, you know what? If it costs you, a few bucks, I think PKP will gladly sign that check. When it comes to the marketing money, if you got to start using that in order to keep some of these guys around, I think he'll sign off on that as well. I mean, it's just simply a matter of putting the best team together on the field, as well as having an outstanding team off the field. I mean, this Alouettes organization has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are here to compete and they are here to win. And it's moves like that that's going to make that absolutely possible.
Now, and I know there's a little bit more, obviously, with we're going to talk about the extension of the expansion of the training camp, of the practice rosters, but there's something that we do need to mention. We did put it out on our social media. It's also, and this does have to do with one of our players and a family member. And it's something that has been talked about, you know, over the past little while, but we did find out today some very sad news. It was reported, I think, by a couple of the French outlets here in Montreal. But we did learn some sad news, did we not?
Yes, unfortunately, Davis Alexander's father, who we know has been battling stage 4 cancer, unfortunately did succumb to the cancer as soon as the bye week, as soon as the Alouettes won against Edmonton basically 2 weeks ago. Davis basically jumped on a plane, headed back to Arizona to be with his family, and it was there that Davis's father had passed away from this cancer, which is hard. I mean, we all know people who have been affected by cancer, and especially losing a family member, especially losing a father is definitely tough beyond compare. Obviously, our hearts and our thoughts and prayers go out to the entire Alexander family and to Davis. He's just you knew this year was so important for him. One, because he was a part of defending that championship team, but he had switched his number to number 10 because of his dad. Because when he played rugby, he wore number 10. So, as a tribute, Davis wanted to pay respect to his dad by wearing that number. And I mean, what better way to pay respect? Also, too, just his outstanding play when he was finally under center for the Alouettes this year. I'm sure his dad was able to see that, and had to feel good seeing number 10 just look absolutely amazing out there. And being able to see your son win a championship, I'm sure must have been a thrill for him as well last year, and on the path to doing that again this year. I mean, I feel for Davis. It's definitely tough losing a parent, and but as a pro's pro, he's back here. He's been at practice this week, and clearly this season is in memory of his dad, and he's playing for him. And I guess if this takes any solace for Davis, is just knowing that as far as I'm concerned, your dad's got the best seat in the house to watch you win, man. So just keep making him proud. And I know we try not to swear on Twitter, but fuck cancer, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we're thinking about you, Davis. We really are. There was as at this time of the year, there is an expansion of the practice rosters, and I think I actually, to be honest with you, I thought I was a good CFL fan. I had to look it up. So it's an expansion of the roster by 5 players to a maximum of 17 during the fall. But the Alouettes did bring back some guys, which if you've been following, like Cliff and I were during practice, during a training camp this year, you would recognize some of these names. And I'm curious to know your thoughts, dude, on them. So the Alouettes brought back running back Michael Herzog, the guy from Hillsdale College. I remember hearing some great things about this guy. Tyrone Howell, wide receiver Tyrone Howell from Louisiana Monroe. Philippe Lemieux Cardinal, defensive end from UDM. Ed Montilus from offensive lineman from North Carolina, and then Trey Thomas, a linebacker from Idaho. Now we saw a few of these guys in camp. Cliff, any of them that you're surprised that we brought back? And were there any people that if you had been GM for the day to bring back people, would there have been anybody else that you potentially would have brought back?
Honestly, I'm glad to see Michael Herzog back, because on draft day, when the Alouettes had announced that he was drafted, and I checked out his film, I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it was rudimentary film, but at the same time, like, you definitely saw the talent was there. he was good enough to get an invite to the mini camp for the Detroit Lions, being a Michigan guy, so to speak. Like even though he's Canadian, Hillsdale College is in Michigan, and being invited to the Detroit Lions camp was, as far as I'm concerned, a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
When he did get to camp, though, he hit the ground running. The only thing is, though, the running back competition was going to be extremely, extremely stiff. So, would he have had the time? I figure if he was going to make the team, then he'd obviously be biding his time on the practice roster, or if he's lucky enough to dress to get in on specials. But unfortunately, the numbers game just didn't quite work out that way, and he ended up being released. But to see him back here, as part of the expanded practice roster, absolutely phenomenal stuff. I'm definitely glad to see that. One interesting name, though, is Trey Thomas, simply because he actually was on the training camp roster for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this year. Didn't make the cut, but has found new life in Montreal, or potentially will have found new life in Montreal. So that could be an interesting wrinkle as far as I'm concerned. One thing I do know about Philippe Lemieux-Cardinal, there's a lot of draft hype with him. A lot of people thought the Alouettes were going to, use one of their late round picks on him because, again, the former Carabin. So of course, Danny Machocha, he loves giving those guys as many opportunities as possible, and for whatever reason, didn't draft him on draft day, nor sign him as an undrafted free agent, but or even get a camp invite, as far as I recall. But I guess the time is now. I guess sometimes things just fall into favor, and now Lemieux-Cardinal is part of the Alouettes practice roster. So far, there hasn't been any names. No names immediately jump out as to who we should have on a practice roster. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know what the scouting staff here in Montreal is looking for. If they're looking to fill any needs, or is it really simply about seeing the best players and that, for whatever reason, are not under contract, and find a way to get them on contract, or even neglist them if you can. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, is just far beyond my level of expertise. And I'm sure Danny Mac could answer those questions no problem. But I mean, this time of year is always interesting because it's also when the NFL has also made their final cuts as well, and you think that certain people are going to come back. Like, for example, Austin Mack came back. The Alouettes are hoping to re-add Lawal Ugalak, but I understand that he's dealing with a shoulder injury, so they're probably waiting to see how he recovers from that before finding a way to bring him back in some way, shape, or form. To me, this is one of the most interesting times of the year because now, like a lot of people say, the CFL season doesn't truly get underway until after Labor Day. Well, we're after Labor Day, and look where the Alouettes are, and they want to stay there. They want to stay, with just one loss in the loss column. They want to do whatever it takes to put together the best team possible to keep on winning, to help reestablish that dominance that they have in the Canadian Football League, and hopefully make their way back to the Grey Cup this year. So it's an exciting time football-wise because, as far as I'm concerned, all bets are off. You do what you got to do to improve your team, and you worry about the fines, the consequences, all this stuff afterwards when it comes to the salary management system or marketing money or any of that jazz. I'm not saying go out and blow your brains out necessarily, but at the same time, you got to do what you got to do to build the best team possible. And without question, I think the Montreal Alouettes are in that mindset, and they are doing exactly that. They are doing whatever it takes to put together the best possible roster so that hopefully come mid-November, they'll be on a plane and heading to Vancouver to defend their Grey Cup championship.
I'm surprised. Again, as we've seen this year, it's all about the next man up. I'm very surprised that the Alouettes did bring in another wide receiver. There are other wide receivers that got cut late in camp that I'm very surprised that they didn't bring back. Like a remote Chucky Brown, as an example. But as we've seen, we're stacked. We're stacked at wide receiver.
Beyond, so, I mean, look, our 6-game list is a friggin' all-star team. It's incredible. That's the thing. And when these guys get healthy, now you're really going to have to play Jenga as far as, okay, who am I going to slot where? And you may even end up seeing some guys getting cut for the simple fact that we just can't keep everybody. And that's the hard part.
Figuring I do not envy Danny Mac and the coaching staff when it comes to juggling the ratio, especially when you have so many people on the injured list.
That's just it. It's such a delicate balance because, I mean, if someone's truly out for the year, then okay, it's a non-factor. But if someone's just dinged up or has an injury that they can come back from, even if it is 6 games later, I mean, this is the balancing act that you have to follow and try to make it work. And listen, I give him all the credit. Danny Machocha has been able to do that and do it very well. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, bringing back an Austin Mack, it is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, yes, this team was doing okay receiver-wise, but simply put, to be able to re-add someone of that caliber and keep him here long-term, that's phenomenal. There's simply no other way to describe it other than it's a phenomenal way to help bolster your lineup. And there's no doubt in my mind, like, when it's all said and done, once all the injuries get sorted out and figured out and people come back healthy, they'll find a way to make sure that everybody is able to contribute to this team. But it really is a very precarious balancing act that you have to go through in the process.
And no kidding. There was another. We're not talking about the transactions just happened recently because we're going to talk about those coming up. We'll do that after our interview, which we happen to forget. We forgot to mention, but still, hey, keep it as a surprise. If you've seen the title of the podcast, of the show, you already know who it is. But still, there's one other move, and then we'll get to our interview, Cliff. If I can find the email here, we signed another player to the practice roster. I don't know much about him. Do you know much about Noradine Nwili from Nebraska? Offensive lineman from Nebraska.
Well, he was
he's global. He's global too. He's a global player.
I was going to say he was the second global player taken in this year's global draft.
That's right. I knew I recognized the name. Okay.
Yeah, playing in Nebraska, of course. They grow strong out there. So I mean, definitely a great addition. A great addition.
Yeah.
All that husking, maybe. That's
exactly. So those are some of the moves that the Owls made. So it's again, there'll be more to talk about after our interview, and we're talking about how being able to find these diamonds in a rough. This guy that we're about to talk to, Cliff, kind of fits that mold, doesn't he?
Oh my God, does he ever? I mean, you talk about we talked about this numerous times. You can't hide talent. Said it before, and I'll say it again. And to find this young man, well, back in the day, to find this young man and bring him here, and for him to become an absolute superstar while wearing the red and blue of the Alouettes, simply phenomenal. And when it was all said and done, he did finish his career with the Grey Cup. Unfortunately, not with the Alouettes, but these things happen. we were so excited to be able to welcome for the first time here on the Alouettes Flightdeck an alumnus that is, without question, one of the fan favorites, if you will, over the past 10 years here in Alouettes Nation. We are so excited to be able to bring on board a man that simply doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to try and give him one anyways. One of the finest defensive tackles that you will find in the Canadian Football League at the time. Enjoying life post-football now, and we're so excited to have the opportunity to talk to him. So without further ado, we are thrilled to be able to welcome onto the Alouettes Flightdeck the one, the only, the former number 91, Alan Michael Cash. Alouettes are back from the bye week, getting ready to take on BC Lions this Friday at Percival Molson Stadium. We decided we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. We decided to bring on an alum, if you will, from the Montreal Alouettes, a man who knows what it's like to play the BC Lions and also what it's like to play at Percival Molson Stadium. Had a fantastic time while he was here. Former Grey Cup champion as well. Unfortunately, not with the Alouettes, but we won't get into that too much. It is our pleasure to welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck the one and only number 91, Alan Michael Cash. Alan, welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck.
Hey, I appreciate you guys for having me, man.
So, Talk to us. What's good? What's going on with you, man? What have you been doing in the post Alouettes career?
Right now I'm in the trucking right now. I've been doing it for about 3 years. Before that, like when I like decided to give up ball, I was counseling in the city schools here in Richmond, Virginia. With the like I wouldn't call them kids that need assistance with behavior in schools. I was doing that in the off season when I wasn't playing football. I was doing that part-time job, and I had did that for about 11 years. And now I'm just trucking and training kids on the weekends.
So, you're definitely a firm believer in reach one, teach one, reach one, right?
Oh, definitely. You gotta pour everything into the youth, man. They need it. They look up to guys like myself, and it's just they they just need it.
No, there's no question. Especially, and what better tool is there than football to help mold a young man and basically turn him from a boy into a man? Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Football just teaches you so much, man. Teamwork, hard work, being certain places at on time or even before the time that you're supposed to be there, and it just molds you into like what you're going to be in life and what you're going to face like everyday life with even when football's over, like working and things of that nature. So um, football definitely all sports really because it's so structured and that's how it is in the workforce. So it definitely prepares you for life.
That's true. Nothing
Right.
beats
Yeah,
good coaching as well, as far as someone just having someone to kind of take you by, take you under their wing and show you this is what you got to do when you get out there in the real world.
Yep, exactly. And it's I feel it's my duty as a former player and athlete that made it to the level that I made it to pour back into the youth and show them something positive, especially kids from the city that I'm from, because like a lot of guys go pro here and they like move on with their life or live in like wherever they played at, they live there, so they like rarely come back. But since I'm here in the city, I just got to do my duty.
it's really cool too because how you're talking there, Alan. It's like it almost mirrors for you and your career because people may not know that you did not start off in the CFL. You actually started off in indoor football, didn't you?
I did for like maybe 4 or 5 games, and indoor football is rough, man. Like they got the cement under the little turf thing. Like my first time stepping on, I'm like, what is this? You hit the ground, like, oh wow, let me stay on my feet. So yeah, I played about 4 or 5 games, and Billy Parker, who was a former Alouette, he was coaching, and he like we were just walking one day to practice. He was like, man, what's your story, Cash? Like you too good for this. Like what's happening? Like what's up? So I just told him, I was like, my agent coming out of college, he wasn't that good and didn't give me no tryouts. I didn't get drafted, so uh, I was doing a little school business, like the counseling, and um, he was like, I told him, I was like, man, I still want to play, so I I went to the arena football team. It's like the stadium, the Coliseum was like 10 minutes away from my house. I was like, might as well play for the city. 4 or 5 games. Billy Parker was like, yeah, you too good for this. I'm going to get on the phone with Jim Pop and shoot. Never played another down. Jim Pop sent the contract. I was on my way.
It's funny too because for those who had been following the Alouettes for such a long time, Billy Parker also himself made a name for himself in the Arena Football League. So I think he knew exactly when, he was kind of, I guess we could say he was kind of, he was scouting himself, saw what you had and what you could do, and said, you know what, like I said, talk about Jim Pop and what was it like though? When did you get the call from Jim? Did you get a call from somebody else that gave you the opportunity to come up to Montreal? What was it like?
Yeah, I actually got the call from Jim Pop, and he already knew who I was because he's from Mooresville, North Carolina. So I went to school at NC State in Raleigh, and he just reached out to me like, "Yeah, I know all about you, and we're gonna send you over a contract and come up and try out." So I was like, "Okay, sound good."
Wow. Not even a negless guy, eh, Cliff? Literally, here's your contract.
Yeah.
Why screw around, right? I mean, I always say you can't hide talent, and clearly Jim Pop knows how to find the talent. So I mean, you probably just took one look and like, I'm sold, done deal. Get your passport, let's go.
Yep. That's exactly.
It didn't matter what. It didn't matter that it was in Canada. It didn't matter that it was in French-speaking Quebec. You were like, you know what? I have my opportunity.
Yep, definitely. I didn't know too much about the CFL before I got up there, so it was all just like brand new to me with like the rules and everything like that. I was just like, oh wow, okay. But I adjusted pretty quick, and I just loved it. Like I wouldn't trade my career for nothing, honestly.
When it comes to coming up to Canada, and obviously your first time in a new country, and you're a lot of people will say football is football. It's the same basic game, just little nuances here and there. What was the biggest adjustment you had to make when it came to playing Canadian rules versus what you were taught at NC State or even in arena ball?
I think one of the adjustments I had to make was being a yard off the ball, making sure you're like 1 yard exactly off the ball. Because, in the States here, we like right on the ball, it's contact right away. So with that 1 yard off, I feel like it gives you an advantage to like read what the lineman is going to do, like give you like a split second more, you know what I'm saying? So that and the 3 downs. Listen, my training in the off seasons were like a lot of conditioning. So I would say those were the 2 biggest changes about it to me.
And I imagine too, with it being 3 downs, a 20-second play clock, you got to be ready to go. Like you cannot take a play off.
Oh, ready to go. I remember like my rookie year, we had just came off the field, and then they were saying, all right, punt team. I was like, huh? We just got on the bench. So it was like, ooh, and then the bigger field and the width and the length. I was just like, oh yeah, I got to really like condition all season, like condition. So
what was it? Obviously, when you came in, everybody remembers Mark Trestman. He was your head coach when you first started in the CFL. What was it like being a player under Mark Trestman? Because everybody, you've read the book. If anybody's read the book, anybody who's seen how he's coached here in Montreal, how he coached in Toronto, and how he coached in the NFL, what was it like being a player under Trestman?
A lot of people don't know this, but Trestman was there when I first went to college. He was the offensive coordinator at NC State, so I had already knew him before.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I already knew his style of coaching, and he's a smart guy. Like he'll pick your brain and certain things like that, and he's a really good coach. But I was already used to him, so it wasn't like I didn't have to do too much much adjusting. So
if anything, was probably easier for you because you already know what to expect out of him, and he knows what to expect out of you. So I'm sure you were able to get acclimated even quicker to, how it is in the locker room.
Yep, it was a easy transition, and it was like picking up where I left off because I think after my freshman year or sophomore year, he like they just cleared the whole coaching staff out. So I mean, I still knew like his way of coaching and how he wanted things done. So I already knew how to adjust.
And I will admit, I was just checking here. Who your different head coaches were when you were here in Montreal, Alan? And you had some characters, to say the least. Obviously, I know you had Coach Pop there for a while, so I'm sure that was interesting too. I mean, but and I was looking at the things here. I mean, you also had
Tom Higgins.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I wanted to ask you about specifically was Coach Hawkins. I don't remember what people remember about Coach Hawkins here in Montreal. I do as a longtime CFL and Alouettes fan. I'm sure I'm trying to be nice here.
Screw that.
I try to be nice. Okay, how about this? Of all the head coaches that you had in Montreal, where would you rate Coach Hawkins?
He'd have to be probably like at the bottom of the list. He wasn't doing it for nobody there. Honestly, it's like his style of coaching was it wasn't like professional the professional way, being that we were under Mark and knew how things should have been done. He just was like total opposite. We were just like, what is this?
Oh, the irony! Because I remember quite a few interviews with Coach Hawkins on the radio and in the papers and what have you. And one of the things he kept talking about was going back to the basics. You got to teach the basics. I'm like, what the hell? These are professional football players. These are grown ass men, and you want to bring the basics? Are you effing kidding me?
Yeah, that was like, I remember in camp he would have us doing like this basketball drill. They do like a 3-man weave thing where you throw the ball and like you weaving in and out. Like we were like, what is this, yo? Like it was it was crazy.
I was about to say, doing the basketball weave in Lennoxville. I can only imagine. The guys were like, when's the second of the 2-a-days going to be done? Because we have to go do something in this little town of Lennoxville just to get just to get away.
It was bad. He didn't fit. I don't.
And there were still quite a few remnants of the championship team from 2009, 2010 in that era. I can just imagine what they must have been feeling like going in there, again, competing for or maintaining their jobs. And then you got this charlatan, I'm sorry to say, pulling this kind of nonsense. Like, I'm sure a lot of you are just like, afterwards, like, what the heck? Like, just
we would be in our little segments, like our D line and like defense was split up into their little groups or whatever. We were like, man, this guy is not it.
Especially John Bowman, one of your teammates, and I'm sure someone you know and appreciate so much in this game. But I can just imagine him, having to do these little basketball drills and what have you, and be like, "This ain't it, Chief."
Not at all. Not at all. Like we and him had a few conversations. Like, yeah, this guy stinks. This is not it. What are we doing here?
Now, during your time with the Owls, you also, you were there for quite a while. I understand you're on the defensive side of the ball, but you were also there at a time where there really was a transition starting, not only with the losing of Coach Tressman, but with also AC having concussion and then him deciding to step away. We've heard a few stories that can be told, on the air when it comes to what it was like, what players felt about, the locker room and stuff like that, and how, certain people will bring teams together and stuff like that. For you as a player who played with AC, how devastating, and that's my word, maybe I'm using a different word, but how devastating would it be for you as a player knowing that, as good as the guy was, there's going to be a major shift when it came to the team dynamic?
It was like AC was a good, like the couple of years that I played with him, he was like a really good teammate, and like I did my research on him and I seen like the history he had, winning those championships and all the yards he thrown for, and it was just like, where do we go from here? And it was just like it for him to get that concussion, man. It just hurt like a dagger. But we tried to figure it out, but it like it's no replacing AC. Like he's a legend.
And there's obviously only so much that the defense can do. You guys don't want to get burnt out on the defensive side of the ball if the offense can't do anything. And I'm sure it was, I'm sure it was frustrating as a player, but obviously you were there to do your job. I mean, when you were with the Owls, was there anybody in particular that you looked up to, stood out with hung out with the most, just to, as I said, defense and we know that the locker room is together, but obviously we know that offense and defense, that you guys are unofficial little cliques, I guess we could say. I mean, but Was there anybody in particular during that time when you were in Montreal that you really either looked up to, or was it that you really hung out with, or you really, if you needed some sort of, uh, you know, some sort of word, any type of word that could kind of get you going? Was there anybody in particular?
I would say John Bowman, who was my guy. SJ Green, that's my guy as well. And we didn't hang out much, but he's gonna always be my boy. Like, we had so many battles. He got me to where I needed to be just by practicing against him, because he's a legendary lineman in the league. But Luke, my
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a
LBJ. Yeah.
yeah. But I hung out with offensive guys and defensive guys, like outside of football or whatever. So like Jamel Richardson and guys like that. We were all cool. Everybody just had good vibes, and we went to work and tried to bring a ship there, but we fell a little short in the Eastern Finals a few years to Hamilton. So,
and Toronto as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
What's one of the few things we've asked to a few players, whether they've been on the offense or defensive side of the ball? What's one of the things that fans get wrong when it comes to hearing about the locker room? Sometimes you'll hear in the media, "Oh, well, Coach so and so has lost the locker room." If you were to be able to basically debunk any type of rumor like that, is there any type of thing you would be able to tell fans that really is not true, type of thing?
Yeah, well, for the coaches and the players are separate, right? So we, as players, we always stuck together, no matter how bad it got. We always fought together. We especially as a defense, we were locked in, man, and we was smacking anything that moved out there. So it was never no divide really in the locker room, and it was all love.
That's it's funny you mentioned a lot of those guys that you mentioned earlier, and I just remember the Twitter convos you guys would have, for everybody to see.
Yeah.
Oh my word! That was the good stuff right there. Especially how many times you talk about practice being hot as a bit?
Hey, hot as a bit. Hey,
that's one of those if you know type of things.
Yeah, and I got you on that word, man. I was like, yeah, Cliffy.
Oh my gosh, well done on that part. All right, when it comes to Noel Thorpe as defensive coordinator, you've worked under him as a player. You see the work that he's doing now with this current version of the Montreal Alouettes.
Yep.
What is it about him that I know a lot of people either love him or hate him? There's really no middle ground when it comes to Coach Thorpe. But what is it about Coach Thorpe that he's able to get the most out of his players, and why do players gravitate towards him?
Coach Thorpe is a really good. He's going to draw it up. He's going to find their weakness, and he's going to send the dogs after them. So he's really good in that aspect. He's always coming up with new schemes, and wherever they're weak at, we're gonna go attack that. And I think he does a really good job of dialing it up. Formations and concepts, he got it down to a T. So anytime you see something, oh yeah, we sending this guy right now, and it's hard to stop, because he'll send the dogs. You either, when you're quarterback, you're gonna have to get it out fast, or you're gonna have to take that hit. And 9 times out of 10, you're still gonna take the hit, because we're sending more than you can block.
Especially from you, because I also remember every time that you get a sack, and I used to get so mad at the play-by-play people in Montreal. when Alan Michael Cash gets a sack, why don't we hear the cha-ching noise? I mean, to me, it just sells itself. This league is so weird when it comes to marketing. Why don't you market your players like that? Alan Michael Cash, money sack. Hello. I mean, it sells itself as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Have you ever talked to anyone on the team regarding that? Why don't they do these kind of things?
I've had a few conversations with, well, now like during this time, but not like when we were playing, but Billy Parker, who I still keep in contact with, and John Bowman. Also Moden Hopkins, like he's me and him still keep in contact. So it like we'll talk about it like these days in time where it's like, man, the CFL, like the marketing is just not like they should do better with the marketing, and I probably now in the stadium, if I was playing, they would probably do the cha-ching because time has passed and like everything's new, so they're like they're trying to stay upbeat. So
yeah, I gotta give props. At least they're usually pretty good, like playing like the right song at the right time at certain moments and things like that. And man, to me, like I just felt like it was such a missed opportunity. I mean, especially with how many sacks you tallied up in your career here in the 514. I mean, again, that is money, no pun intended.
yeah, man. Listen, I had such a great time playing there, man. The city is like lovely. I love it there. I'm gonna have to actually retire from there. Like I want, like because I ended with like my last stint was I was in Edmonton and had got an injury or whatever. I was in Montreal at first, and then they released me when Cavis was coaching, and they released me. I went to Edmonton and like I got hurt, and I just was like, yeah, I'm gonna hang it up.
So have you officially retired? Like, could you, in theory, do like the 1-day contract with Montreal and officially retire as an Alouette?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that when I come in October.
Perfect. We're breaking news. All right. You heard it, ladies and gentlemen. So okay, I don't know when in October. I mean, I know there's 2 games in October, so I'm going to assume maybe the 26th.
Yeah, that's about. I'll be there maybe like the 20th or so. So yeah, definitely the 26th.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, if you weren't already inspired to get your tickets for that game, October 26th, I think it's against Winnipeg. There you go.
Yeah.
The official retirement of Alan Michael Cash as a Montreal Alouette, as it should be.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really don't want to delve into this, but I know we kind of have to. You are a Grey Cup champion, and you did it with a lot of these teammates that we talked about. But it was with the Toronto Argonauts. What was that like as far as, you decided in free agency to test the waters, you go to Toronto, and that's the team that goes to the Grey Cup, wins the whole damn thing. Talk to me about your brief but shining time as a Toronto Argonaut.
So most of the guys that was in Montreal with me, they all came over to Toronto too. SJ Green, Bear Woods, we had like most of the guys like I really like meshed with, and it was great, man. Like I feel like I had deserved that, so I was happy. Even though it wasn't with the Alouettes, I still got me one, so I was very excited about that.
And what I can't help but think about is that team goes and wins the Grey Cup. That Alouettes team, which basically cast a lot of these guys aside and just let them either walk or threw them out the door, basically. You talk about karma. You talk about the football gods deciding to, put you over their knee, kind of thing. The Alouettes go 3-15 that year, arguably one of their worst seasons in recent history. I mean,
that's crazy, man. But Jim Pop was over there. He gave me that call. He was like, "Hey, you still playing football?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You want to be an Argo?" I was like, "Yeah." Send the contract over. So made it happen.
Playing under Mark Trestman too.
Yeah, again, yeah. So
that's it. Like, it was funny. I was even jokingly saying, like, they're not the Argonauts, they're the Alouettes, because there's so many Alouettes that were on that team. It's like practically another Alouette squad, but just happened to be wearing double blue, I guess.
Yeah, man.
No, it's.
I was gonna say, we've heard the story with SJ and how he felt slighted. That year that he went to Toronto and stuff like that. I mean, were you within that same mindset that you felt that you were being disrespected by the Owls? Because obviously, and no, we're not asking for specifics, but we know there are different variables when it comes to the free agency market and negotiating a new contract. Were you along the lines with what SJ was and feeling disrespected on not feeling that the team gave you what you were worth, and that's why you decided to go ahead and go with everybody else. But I understand it. You made up like money, no pun intended, by winning that Grey Cup. So, but I guess by your reaction, you're within the same feeling that S was. You're just feeling disrespected.
Yeah, definitely. I knew my worth. I knew like what I knew the guys that I was on the same level with, that were like getting those like good payouts or whatever. So I asked for a price and it didn't happen. So I was just like, oh wow, okay, 5 years, okay. So I hated to go, but life goes on. You got to do what's best for you and your family. So
Exactly. And I'll never fault any player for feeling that way. I mean, obviously, fans want you to stay put, especially if they loved you as much as what the fans in Montreal did, and they wanted you, would have loved to see you spend your entire career as an Alouette. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. But you gotta, as you said, you gotta do what's best for you and your family.
right. Yep. And if it was my choice, I would have never left Montreal. I would have stayed there like my whole career, but things just didn't work out like I thought they would. So I had to make that decision. But I'll always be an Alouette at heart, like forever. So
But when you slide on that Grey Cup ring, you're like, this is pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie.
it was shining too. I was like, oh, I got me one. I was excited. So yeah, man.
And too, Cliff, he took a part in one of those memorable Grey Cups too, because the Grey Cup that he played in 2017, everybody's going to remember that game too, man, because the snow and I mean how it ended, Shania Twain. I mean, it's one of those games that people will remember.
Yep, Ricky Ray's last year, I think. Yep.
Almost. Yeah, he did. He got hurt in 2018, but basically that was. Yeah. Yep. That was peak Ricky Ray right there, and actually Cody Fajardo was on that team as well.
You're right,
and he's here now doing his thing. And
wow, man, I'm happy for Cody, man. He's a real good like student of the game, and he's like that speech last year that he gave. He's going to fire you up, man, and make you want to put everything on the line for him. So I'm glad they got a good quarterback now, and hopefully more Grey Cups.
Well, that's it. I mean, and what better teacher for Cody to have than Ricky Ray? I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's to sit under that learning tree. It has to be absolutely phenomenal.
Definitely, yeah.
As being a former player, currently watching from the stands, so to speak, what's your thought so far on this past just year plus of the Alouettes and what, obviously as soon as Danny Machocha came in, Jason Moss came in, and then you bring in Cody, et cetera. I mean, what's been your thought on this team over the past just year plus?
I think they did a real good job of building and putting the right pieces in the right places, and as we see, it was a success. So they just got to keep on balling, man, for real, and they'll be back-to-back champs, and that hasn't happened since 2009 2010. So
now, do you look at the young bull that's wearing your 91, Isaac Adeyemi Berglund? Is he doing your number proud as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think he's done a pretty decent job. I was checking him out. I seen him come to the sideline. I'm like, okay, 9-1. So he's doing me proud.
Good, because that was my thought. The minute he signed and I saw he was taking 9-1, I'm like, oh, that's a big number to live up to. So I hope you know. And I think we even discussed it when we had him on the show. It's like, I know I got to perform. I'm here to help this team win. And sure enough, I mean, he's as far as I'm concerned, he is killing it out there.
Yeah, he's doing a good job. But those guys see me in the film room when Thorpe shows the film, and like Dylan Wynn, he was on that championship team in Toronto too, and that's my boy. Mm-hmm. I chop it up with him sometimes, and he asked Thorpe, he was like, "That's Cash?" Thorpe was like, "Yeah." So I'm glad he like in full form, like dominating out there. But they got a real solid squad, man. I'm happy. I'm excited for those guys, and I definitely hope they go get another one.
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be such a good feeling knowing that even if you're not officially part of the team, still like the fact that your DNA is still a part, like that championship DNA is still a part of this current team right now as it sits. I mean, that's got to be tremendous for you.
Yeah, man. I'm definitely proud of those guys, man, and I know everybody in the city is proud of them, and they got their back to the end. And like, what a great fan base it is in Montreal, man. They love on you so hard, man, and it's just overwhelming.
No, there is nothing like Alouettes Nation. I'm not gonna argue that with you at all. Well, I'm not gonna argue much with you, man. You're like way bigger than I am. So,
My boy, man, we good. I got your back.
all right, Alan, I want to know when you were playing here in Montreal or in the CFL in general, what was your favorite place that wasn't Montreal to play in?
I liked playing in, I'd say, BC probably. They had got a pretty cool stadium. Let the roof off and everything like that is pretty sweet.
All right. And conversely, what would you say would be the place that, like, oh hell no, I don't want to ever go back there?
Hamilton. God, those fans are so obnoxious over there, man. Hey, listen, you just hear it like you're on the sideline sitting and they just talking crazy, and you're like, man, relax, bro. Like,
dial it down, dial it down.
yeah.
Try being in the stands, as an Alouette supporter, hearing a lot of that too. It's like, ooh, okay, like, and again, I'm always of the opinion, act like you've been there before, don't be a jerk or anything like that. And, most of the fans there, I will say, are passionate, loyal, and very welcoming as well. But yeah, you get a couple of these jagoffs that are just like, you just sit your ass down, man.
Too many beers, man. Too much tailgating and coming there and just talk crazy. I swear around a few times. I'm like, man, relax. Like, you want to come? You want to come down here?
That's a bit like, come on down. Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk. You're a big man. Let's go.
Yeah, go streak across the field.
Surprised. I thought you would have said Saskatchewan, because everybody hates Saskatchewan. And you played at the time too, where it was old Mosaic. So you were playing at the old Mosaic rather than the new Mosaic, right?
Yeah, to me, it wasn't that bad, honestly. You know what? I'll put them and Hamilton like on the same they're like neck and neck for the worst stadiums to play.
It's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And I'm actually very surprised you said BC, because everybody knows the history of the Alouettes in BC is that good. I was very surprised. So I'm guessing it was either the stadium, the locker room, the food. That it must have been something that swayed your mind, right?
Yeah, stadium for sure. I just thought it was pretty cool how like they can slide the roof back and everything like that. But man, I'll tell you what, sometimes they slid the roof back and it was so hot in there. I had to change out jerseys at halftime one time. My jersey was soaked. I'm like, yo, it is blazing.
So literally hot as a bee. I could had to bring that back. Oh my. Talk to me a little bit about the coaching that you're doing right now. I know you said you're coaching up some kids right now and trying to impart your wisdom on them. Talk to us about that experience, like what you're getting out of that, and are you hoping that's going to lead to like a professional coaching career, or what are you looking to do with that?
I'm actually going to start my own business, get my LLC for training. Like, I want to build like a little training facility where right now I train like just defensive lineman guys. So and it goes from ages like 7 to like college guys, and even some pro guys that I know like will come and get like a couple of sessions in. And it's actually like the guys that are in my training, they say that like they've been using the tools and everything that I taught them, and like they've been having success with it. So that makes me happy. that they can go out there and perform at a high rate and be successful.
It's amazing. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of the Alan Michaels school of hard knocks, so to speak?
Yeah, man. It's a blessing though, man, that I'm just able to give back, and you know, guys trust me enough to listen to me and do the things that I tell them. And I'm just thankful.
Well, we're thankful too, man. I mean, you came up here. You probably didn't know a dang thing about Canada, but you came up here. You made an impact. You showed. We showed the love. Everybody showed the love. I mean,
Yeah.
Listen, you have definitely made an impact on this community, on this league as well. And the fact that you're still coming up here every now and again to check on the Alouettes, make sure that everybody's doing good. The fact that they're referencing you as well. I mean, listen, like, as far as I'm concerned, you are a part of the fabric that makes up Alouettes Nation. Like, you are what it means to be an Alouette. I think there's no better example than to say, look at Alan Michael Cash. Look what he was able to do in his time here in Montreal. And if you can replicate that, or even come even doing half of that, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that a lot, man. Anytime I went out there, I just put it all on the line for the fans, for my teammates, and I'm glad you said that. I'm glad everybody in the city still welcomes me with open arms. So I'm very blessed and thankful for that.
Well, without question. Okay, before I let you go, Alan, where do we find you on social media? Drop your mention, your handles, all that stuff. Where can people find Alan Michael Cash on the internet?
You can hit me up on Rich Boy Cash 91 on Instagram and TikTok as well, and Facebook. Just my whole name, Alan Michael Cash, and you can check out some of my training videos that I got going on. And yeah, man, y'all follow up.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You heard the man. There you go. Show the love, because I tell you, as part of Alouettes Nation, he's it. Simply put. Alan Michael, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Alouettes Flight Deck. We appreciate you. We're looking forward to seeing you again back at Percival Molson Stadium, hopefully sooner rather than later. Yep. But man, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Hey, I appreciate you guys for having me on here, man. Thanks.
All stories are different when it comes to players, Cliff. And it just goes to show, coming from indoor football, just so happens to know at that time an Alouette who was coaching, and sure enough, Jim Pop, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if it only were that easy for all the players in football, but it just goes to show that the stories for these players can differ from one end of the spectrum to the next. But it was just great talking to, just so great talking to him.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Michael is just a fantastic dude. As great of a player as he was on the field for Montreal, even better person off of the field. I mean, he always had time for the fans. He always had time to, never shy about, autographs, photos, what have you, and just sitting and rapping about football too. I mean, just an absolute prince of a guy off the field. I mean, we were so thankful that he was able to find some time for us. So glad he was able to come onto the flight deck, share his story, and I'm excited now. If you weren't excited before about the October 26th game against Winnipeg, to know that his plan is to come here and officially retire as a Montreal Alouette, amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, he truly has become a part of Alouettes Nation. We've seen him at games over the past couple of years. He still believes in this team. He's still very much a part of this team. As I said, he's very much woven into the fabric of Alouettes Nation. We are so thankful to have had Alan Michael Cash play for the Alouettes, and to have him basically as truly, literally, a big fan of the Alouettes is even better. So once again, Alan Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You're welcome back here anytime you want. You know where to find us.
Now it's coming off a bye week. They're playing the BC Lions. It's funny. BC used to be their Labor Day Classic rival, even though I know the CFL tried to make it a thing.
They tried.
At least thank goodness for them being able to us, to have our game at Thanksgiving, and then obviously it makes sense that it is Ottawa. It is a game with a bunch of returns. Not necessarily on the Alouettes side, but when you talk about it, it'll be William Stanback's first game in Montreal since he left for free agency.
Yep,
It'll be Canadian Nathan Rourke's first ever start versus the Alouettes.
that's right.
It'll be obviously the return of VA, Brendan Adams Jr. We don't know what his current status is as of yet, but we'll see where he is in the depth chart. And obviously, again, this is a return of the Alouettes coming off of a bye. There's so many different things that play into this game itself because, everybody knows the history of the Alouettes in BC. It's kind of been the same thing for BC here in Montreal. Wasn't last year, but I mean, that's kind of how it is.
Well, the Alouettes won last year.
Yeah, I mean, but usually, yeah, correct. So I'm thinking of COVID year prior.
Yes.
Anyways, again, there are so many different storylines for this game itself. I mean, luckily for the Alouettes, Cliff, the Owls have been pretty good when it comes off of the games following a bye. They have won their last 5 games when coming off of a bye.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a plus. But also, I think in itself, this is a BC team that really had gone through a stretch. I mean, they won 5 in a row, lost 5 in a row. They lost VA in the during that streak. Got Nathan Rourke back from the NFL. And yet these two teams are still, it doesn't matter where BC is in the standings. This BC team is still very dangerous despite how mid the West Division is this year.
Yeah, and I think BC is kind of finding its form at the right possible time. It was funny when Nathan Rourke was returned to BC. Everybody was hyped. Everybody was excited because, oh my God, we saw what Kid Canada can do. And those first 2 games were not great. It was almost like, oh my gosh, he hasn't played football in a year, proper football in a year and a half. How? Of course, he's not going to look great. But now he's kind of got himself settled in, and he really found his form at Touchdown Pacific last week against Ottawa. Like, he's got to be raring to go. He's got to be looking forward to just keep lighting it up. And I think he sees this Alouettes team, he's got to look at them as a great challenge, like a real test to see how far he's come as far as, making his return to the Canadian Football League. I mean, to be the man, you have to be the man. Yep, to be the man, you have to beat the man, is what they say. And right now, the Alouettes, they're the man. They are the best team in the Canadian Football League. And if Nathan Rourke wants to call himself the best, quarterback, he's paid like the best quarterback. He's paid as the face of the league as a young Canadian. He's going to want to have to test himself against teams like Montreal and beat them. And I think he's looking at this as a great opportunity to show what he's capable of. Montreal, conversely, they got to shut the door on him. They got to prove they got to make him look more like that quarterback who faced Winnipeg and Ottawa in Ottawa. They got to expose him. They got to do what they can to make him look bad. And if any team's going to do it, it's going to be this Montreal Alouettes defense. I mean, they make quarterbacks' lives a living hell. I'm excited to see both aspects of this. I'm excited to see what Nathan Rourke can do against a truly formidable opponent, and I'm really excited to see what the Alouettes defense, led by Noel Thorpe, is able to do against Kid Canada and the Canadian superstar. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see what they've got planned for him and how they're going to go about their game plan to limit him, to make him look humble, to make him look like your average Joe. Like, as you said, the West right now is wide open, and a lot of these teams are looking pretty mid. I think the goal for this Friday is to make the BC Lions and Nathan Rourke look mid.
Exactly. And by the way, BC did beat us 34-25 last year at home.
You sure it wasn't the year before?
It was within that streak where they're in that last losing streak. It was midway in that last losing streak before they went on their run.
So maybe I guess I'm confusing 2022 then. For some reason, I thought it was
Either way.
because it was VA's first game back, but yeah. So my bad.
Yeah. No, VA came in. I think VA came in at the last moment in this game. He was just thrown into it, if I remember correctly, and he didn't do very well. I think that was the game. Either way.
That was
now,
then.
When you
This
look,
is now.
exactly, and you look. By the way, some of these things, I did not know this. Looking at the different stats that were put out this week by the CFL, it's funny. We talked about the Elks and how poor that they are in the third quarter this year. Well, BC themselves, they have a minus 34 scoring differential in the third quarter. On the flip side of that, Cliff, the Owls are plus 19 in the third quarter. So once again, it's
we talk about the halftime adjustment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that third quarter could easily be a huge factor. We'll see what happens. See what the score is at half.
I mean, the past few games for Montreal, we've talked about this numerous times. Is the first half is like the feeling out process, and as a result, it's not. It doesn't look good. It's pretty. You start to doubt this. You start doubting this team because they just look so shaky and not sure. But I mean, truly, and then we come to find out it truly is the feeling out process, trying to know your enemy and learn from them, and trying to find out what where the chinks in the armor are, and then those second half adjustments come in, and all of a sudden it's a completely different team in the second half. And again, I will not be surprised to see that yet again here this is their first time facing BC this year. They're going to have to learn these guys pretty quick and find out what their tendencies are, find out what it is that they're going to be doing in order to make those adjustments and apply them in the second half so that the Alouettes can continue, as you said, to keep putting on points in the third quarter and beyond. And if they can neutralize whatever BC has been able to do in the first half going forward into the second half, that could very well be the difference between who wins and who loses on Friday.
I'm very interested to see what Noel Thorpe does for his game plan versus William Stanback, because as we've seen throughout the year, the Alouettes' run defenses can be pretty shaky at times. And Stanback he's currently third. He's second or third in the league right now with overall yardage.
It's almost as if going to BC has breathed new life into William Stanback. I mean, not that he was a terrible player the past couple of years. In fact, I would argue he was actually a very phenomenal player. But I mean, BC has pretty much turned him loose and let him really, literally run roughshod over people. So, yeah, considering how shaky the Alouettes' run defense has been over the past few weeks, I sincerely hope Noel Thorpe during that bye week has just been cooking up all kinds of schemes and finding all kinds of ways to limit William Stanback. Anyone else who's going to be running the rock for not just the BC Lions, but anyone else going forward in the second half of the season.
No, I agree. So it should be. I'm very interested to see, because obviously, as we've seen when it comes to on our side of the ball, Walter Fletcher seems to be that dual threat out of the backfield. Not only he's been, I think he's only had 90. I think it's only 90 total rushes this year. I had to go back and check the stats. I think I'm close to it, but it's what he's doing out of the backfield as far as being a wide receiver has made him that dual threat. And he's been, the rushing game may not be there, but him out of the backfield, he's made up for it in spades.
Captain checkdown. I mean, however you get the ball, whatever you do, it's what you do with it that counts. And you put the ball in Walter Fletcher's hands, whether it's handing off to him or throwing it to him, he's going to make plays happen. He's going to move the chains and score touchdowns. That's just what he does. So, I mean, yes, absolutely, we would love to see him get more rushes and be more productive as a running back. But if all you can do, sometimes if all you can do is just catch the ball and go for tutties, that works just fine too.
Yeah. But looking at the roster this week, and by the way, the game currently, according to FanDuel, is the Alouettes are favored by 3.5 points. Over under is 50.5. But I think what is very interesting to see, and this is why I've always stressed this, by the way, Cliff, and I know you'll agree with me on this one, is you need to pay attention not only to who the team has signed and the transactions in the CFL for your team, but you also need to check out social media, because anything can pop up at the last moment, as we've seen. and also the practice reports, because usually you're able to tell who potentially will and will not start or be on the depth chart for that week's game. And there are a couple of instances this week, Cliff. There's a huge positives, and I'm gonna talk about these right now. But there are also some very interesting tidbits that you and I have noticed, and we'll see what happens once the depth charts do come out sometime on Thursday. But for the Alouettes, Cliff, here are the positives. Tyrell Richards, full practice, so he'll be available, which is great to see. Keon Jalen Grant will be out, even though he did practice a full day on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Snead, who's been off with that foot injury, he will be questionable, even though he did practice for 2 of the 3 days this week.
One thing we'll have to check, though, we know it's foot injury that he's been suffering with, but now with that new fat contract, I'm sure his hip, his wallet pocket's going to be hurting a little bit too. So. Hopefully not, but you never know, right?
Yeah. We know obviously about Davis Alexander. He even though he did not practice on Monday, he was a full participant this week, and he will be available as the number 2. Tyrese Beverett will be available. He had an illness this week. Pierre-Olivier Lestage, that was part of last week's game where he went out, but he will be available. Nate Bahar will be available. He had a hamstring issue, but he will be available. Philip Gagnon, also another last-second change to the roster last week, but he will be available this week. Now, here's the interesting one, and this is where I've always said, I said, you need to check every single thing that's available for your team, because you may get a great idea of what's happening. So Austin Mack did practice. He only practiced once this week. He was limited on Wednesday, and it was via ankle. But according to one of the reporters on RDS on social media, he hurt his ankle.
Oh.
But he did say he was going to play. That being said, obviously it may be following the same playbook as it is for Coach Moss. If he's available, he'll play. But one of the interesting things when it comes to the transaction wire, Cliff, and now knowing that thing that with Austin Mack, is that Reggie White Jr. has been activated. If you remember a couple weeks ago, fans, that he was placed on the practice roster once Matt came back. If Reggie's been activated, where does that place the possibility that Mac does not play this week? Because we were talking about shuffling the roster around.
Mm-hmm.
These are 2 Americans, unless one of them becomes a designated a Canadian for the game.
Right.
Thoughts? I mean, am I pretty spot on? Am I pretty close to what, based on what we've seen, that it's very possible that Mac does not play, based on what we've seen with the reports on social media?
I mean, it's definitely something to take into consideration. I mean, the guy just got back, so I mean, he's obviously there was a big push to make sure he played the last game versus Edmonton, just because it's just part of the hype of Austin Mack is back, and even though he's going to be with his team for the next 4 years, people still want to see him out there.
Yeah.
We don't know to what extent if he suffered any injuries or got banged up while he was with the Atlanta Falcons. And, as part of the excitement of just, I just want to get back on the field and play again. Did maybe something happen? Did maybe his foot turn a different way or something like that? The only person who would know that 100% would be, of course, Austin Mack.
Right.
With that in mind, it's not a bad idea, knowing full well what Reggie White Jr. is able to do and what he has been able to do this season, which is nothing short of phenomenal. Having him in the lineup, having him practicing, and being an integral part of that, playing with the starters, that can only be a good thing as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if you have to put Austin Mack on the 1-game list just as a fail-safe, I mean, yes, he did go through a bye week, but at the same time, if this does kind of open up a possibility for Reggie White Jr. to come back and still be a major contributor for this Alouettes offense, I say you do it. I mean, you got to protect your long-term investment in Mack without question. especially since Reggie White's been playing outstanding football when he has been on the field. I mean, I hesitate to use the term replacement because you can't replace Austin Mack so easily. And just like it was also hard to replace, quote unquote, Reggie White Jr., but someone had to sit. And ultimately, it was Reggie White who ended up sitting while Austin Mack made his return to the Montreal Alouettes. Could this just simply a matter of rearranging the deck chairs a little bit? Possibly. I guess, again, until we get the depth chart, we can't say 100%, but
exactly.
I mean, if truly there is, if Austin's banged up even just a little bit, you're better to err on the side of caution. And again, Reggie White Jr. is not a bad plan B as far as I'm concerned for this offense.
Yeah, it could be as a just a next man up as a just in case, if for whatever reason if Austin can't go. Other things too. By the way, I found this very weird, and I don't know how to think about this one. And this is just a quick thought. Our fourth string quarterback James Morgan, who did get some reps. He was activated for a couple of games during the whole Cody thing. Been placed on the single game injury list, and that seems a little odd for a guy that's currently on the practice roster, unless there are limitations because of the expansion of that practice roster recently.
Or I wonder if maybe someone was trying to put in a claim for James Morgan.
Ooh, smart think. I never thought about that one.
Because if he's on the practice roster,
that's a good thought. Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, if you were to sign him, then you would have to dress him.
Yes.
So maybe Montreal, just as a fail-safe, maybe is putting him on the one-game injured list to, I don't want to say hide him necessarily, but prevent a team if maybe they had designs on, looking at the part. And let's not forget Zach Caleros in the Labor Day Classic took a pretty wicked headshot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Chris Streveler is not, as far as I'm concerned, the answer for quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I'm not saying James Morgan is either, but at the same time, this is how teams think. This is how they got no doubt are going to look at their options and see what they do. And if they, again, we haven't really seen very much of James Morgan on the field this year, other than in training camp and in preseason. I mean, could that possibly be an insurance, policy for other teams to think about? And maybe as a result, the Alouettes decided to outfox him by making him unavailable due to injury. Maybe not. Obviously no one's going to ever validate that with a thought, but it is something to sort of keep in mind going forward as these rosters grow and the potential to add more players becomes very much a thing. It's just one of those little things that you have to sort of keep in the back of your mind as possible, as just a creative use, shall we say, of...
Oh, that's a great thought, though. I never thought of it, because I'm just double-checking right now because it hasn't been updated yet on the Alouettes roster page. James Morgan was on the practice roster. So it's a good thought there, Cliff. I think you're pretty spot on that one, buddy. Also, just as people know that Michael Domagala, kicker brought in as a just in case, with David Cote on the 6th game, makes me wonder if he's close to coming back, or at least starting to practice again. Michael Domagala was released. Other games were transferred to the practice roster: Katie Davis, Donovan Trelly, Michael Roan. And as I said, Reggie White Jr. was added from the practice roster. So obviously check out the social, check out our socials for when the depth chart does come out. And hopefully we'll get a few more answers to some of these questions. But again, follow your team in every single way you can.
Knowledge is power.
The information's out there.
Yeah.
The information's out there. So,
and if you don't want to follow all that information and try to decipher it, come check us out here on the Flight Deck. We'll break it down for you as much as we can.
Exactly. Speaking of the Flight Deck, we are on social media, many places you can find us. You can find our archive over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. All 8+ years, 9+ years of shows that are currently there available to listen to. If you want to find us on socials, you can do so on X over at Alouettes Flight Deck. Alouettes FL Deck. Facebook over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod, and Instagram and YouTube, and that's Alouettes Flight Deck. Don't forget over on YouTube, you can find our companion show. It's our post-game show of Flight Deck Live, where you can find us every game, post-game, every single Alouettes game, home or away. You'll find us there. Just make sure you check out all our socials, because we will announce when the show is going to go live. And being that we are a home game this week, approximately you will see us go live around probably anywhere between 10:45 and 11 p.m. Eastern. But just stay tuned to our socials for when you will see that. Looking to rep the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can do so by heading over to our shop at www.flightdeckgear.ca. Don't forget, maybe you want to get one of our shirts, maybe a Cartoon Bird 56 shirt, and get ready for our second annual fan meetup during the tailgating for Thanksgiving Monday. And lastly, same thing. It's not up here yet, but you can find us over on Twitch. Just do a search for us. I think it's twitch.tv/Alouettes Flight Deck, all one word. And you can find also a recap of all of the previous episodes of Flight Deck Live.
Yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, however it is that you're following us. Make sure you get that notification on as well, so that when we do go live or when a new podcast drops, whenever we release the content out, make sure you know about it right away. So again, hit that follow button, hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you're a part of the flight crew.
Exactly. And lastly, before we leave, Alouettes announced something pretty cool this week, Cliff. Obviously, besides it being a country night, maybe they will play country. Maybe they'll play country roads. Maybe.
I'm not holding my breath, Tim. I'm sorry. I got to take umbrage right now. When the team's winning, you really can't complain. You almost have to look hard to find fault in things, unless you're a certain reporter for the Montreal Gazette. But this team has been sorely lacking in playing country roads at the end of the game. And it's not because, now again, a couple of these games have gone down to the wire, and it hasn't been like a foregone conclusion that they were going to win. They pretty much had to fight for it, but at the same time, you find a way to play country roads. It has become tradition for Alouettes Nation to be a part and sing along. And it's like Sweet Caroline in Hamilton. It's like so many other
Sunday Bloody Sunday, which should normally be played for Alouettes Sunday games, which they did miss that opportunity last home game.
No U2 whatsoever. And you could sort of make the argument because of the whole 1974 motif, maybe they wanted to keep more of that era, which unfortunately U2 was not a part of. I could buy that argument barely, but okay, fine. At the same time, though, it's still a Sunday tradition. You play U2, but play country roads. I don't know who's been asleep at the wheel lately, but you got to start doing better. I mean, especially going into this, second half of the season, essentially. I mean, especially now, you're getting over 20,000 fans per game now. I mean, it's not a guarantee. I mean, you still have to work for it. And as long as this team keeps on winning, people are going to show up. But you got to respect tradition. You got to respect the things that make Percival Molson Stadium such an amazing place to watch football. We had our friends out from Saskatchewan and Edmonton, and they couldn't stop raving about how loud it gets, how fun it is, the energy in Percival Molson Stadium, and just the electricity in the air because, yes, the team is winning, but at the same time, this organization has created a fun, exciting, electric atmosphere. And a big part of that is playing country roads before games end. So, if you got to play your country songs throughout because it's country night, I get it. You want to sell some cowboy hats and, do all that hee-haw stuff, great, have at it. But for the love of God, play country roads, please.
Yeah. And you're talking about how it is when it comes to the fan environment. What's announced, Cliff, that they have already sold 22,000 seats for this game versus the BC Lions, and so we're this close to reaching the new capacity at Percival Molson, which is just over 23,000, and maybe we'll surpass it. We'll find out, but you got to be there in order to find out. Don't read it in the newspaper. Don't go by one of our tweets when it's announced. Be there and be a part of the action.
Absolutely. If you've got a chance, if you haven't gotten your tickets, there are still some left. So I mean, I strongly advise, don't wait till the last second. Don't think you can just walk up to the ticket office and hope to snag a pair at the last second, because you may come to find this Friday, if you go do that, you may be SOL. I mean, so if you haven't gotten your tickets already, get them now. You do not want to miss this game. This is going to be a fun, exciting game with a fun, exciting atmosphere. You want to be a part of this, folks.
Exactly. Again, you'll be catching us next on Friday evening after the game for our post-game show, Flightdeck Live from Percival Molson Stadium. Also, you'll be seeing us next week for next week's show. We have a couple of ideas of what we want to do, but stay tuned to all of our socials for any information that may come across the wire, including any news concerning the Alouettes with CFL, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and by the way, if you're watching on TV, don't want to listen to the play-by-play for whatever reason, catch up with Cliff. He does a great play-by-play during the game. So, and by the way, I know we're not on this week, Cliff, but what a return. I at least have to mention it before we leave. The return of the CFL on CTV for the very first time in 38 years. Alouettes will be a part of that within 2 weeks.
Incredible. I mean, they're kicking things off with the Banjo Bowl, which is, to me, a heck of a way to get this new era of the CFL on CTV started. I'm very excited. So, I mean, once again, no excuses, folks. I mean, if you truly can't make it to the game, make sure you're tuned in on CTV or however it is that you watch CFL football. But yeah, exciting times ahead. Once again, for all intents and purposes, the CFL season is truly, unequivocally underway. So
that's right. And
guess
the
what?
the road to the Grey Cup 1-11 has started.
Absolutely. And the Montreal Alouettes are going to be a part of the playoff picture. We don't know where yet, but don't you want to come along and find out where they end up? I mean, I personally think there's a very good chance the Alouettes will be hosting the Eastern Final at Percival Molson Stadium. And oh my God, is that going to be electric? So, but they still need your support between now and then. So make sure you're tuned in, folks. However it is that you watch this incredible sport of ours, make sure you are a part of this.
Exactly. So we'll see you guys next week, or we'll see you on the post-game show on Friday. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.